So the other reason why projects are getting big, more and more complex and more difficult to meet its business objectives is that projects are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's also driven by competition and the way, especially like in the oil and gas industry and those sort of industries, in order to remain competitive, people make projects bigger to benefit from economy of scale. So the bigger the project is, the less your unit cost is. And the result is that you get mega projects of many, many billions of dollars. These projects are so big that it's very difficult to get a handle on them. And as you can see there from recent research from IPAs, only about 35% of mega projects actually meet their goals. If you have a quick look on the spider diagram on the right-hand side, the smaller the spider circle is, the more successful the project is. But all that I wanted to point out here is the successful projects in the center little circle, unsuccessful projects in the outer circle. You will see that projects fail on all aspects. If it's late, the cost is too high, it doesn't produce what it should produce. We do not find that projects just fail on one of the aspects or so on. And that leads to the reasoning of the Jemima principle. Either a project is very successful or it is very unsuccessful. There's not a mediocre in-between thing on these large projects. And therefore, one has to be very, very careful when you execute these big projects, plan them properly and manage them properly. Right now we come to why we think projects fail and some of the main contributors. So on this pie diagram, you can see that the blue left-hand side, almost 50% or exactly 50% of the reason why projects fail is because of the requirements not defined properly. And this starts with what are the business objectives, what are the project objectives, what are the requirements of the final product, and so forth. If you don't understand that, there is no way you can really expect the project to be successful. So we will spend one whole webinar on how do we define the requirements of a project, how to make sure everybody is aligned and that the project has a proper boundary around which the project can be executed. The second point is scope definition. It goes sort of hand in hand with the requirements. You have to develop a scope for the facility that will meet the business need. And very often the scope is ill-defined. There's a lot of scope growth during the project. So we will talk about how to define scope, how to manage scope, and so forth. Risk management is the next topic, really. Adequate risk management. I've seen in my sort of career that very often projects that failed, the risk was on the risk register, but people thought, oh, this risk will not happen, the probability is too low, and they didn't address it. And then it actually does materialize, and they have no plan for managing that risk. And sometimes it had a big effect. Last bit, communications. Effective communication is very, very important. And the last webinar, we are really looking at addressing the needs for being an effective project team and make sure that communication flows properly. Thanks, James. Right. We also want to look at the symptoms of projects and actually the root causes. People often look at symptoms and they try and treat the symptoms, like the symptom is the cost of the project has slipped or the schedule has slipped. But why is that? Is that because the requirements were not properly done? And you'll see that the actual root causes sort of underlying the ocean as depicted by that iceberg is often a lot more. And in order to make sure that the cost doesn't slip or the schedule doesn't slip, you have to find out what the root cause is and really address that root cause.